Hello and welcome. So, as you can guess, I'm not outdoors for this video. This is just a response to the Ofcom proposed changes to the UK amateur radio licensing conditions. And Ofcom have asked for people who take an interest in this to respond to the proposed changes. So I'll put the links in the description below. Because there's a document you can read, quite a hefty document. I've read some of it, most of it, especially the summary points. But then there's also a link to a form that you fill in to respond to the proposal. But I just want to give my feedback, my immediate response, which I'll put into the document and send to Ofcom. But before I do that, I just want to go over the summary that's in the Ofcom document. So in some ways it's not such a scary document. So basically there's three broad aspects of the proposed changes to the licensing conditions, and the aim for these are to it says here to modernize it and to streamline the licensing, to make it a bit easier, and to take some of the confusion and the confuddle, is that a word, out of the UK licensing conditions. And the three broad areas is an update in the overall licensing framework. So still maintaining the three tiers, the foundation, intermediate and full, and the NOV, but making it much easier and a bit cleaner by actually proposing that rather than having three licenses, because I'm M6LZT, 2E0EZT, and M0SZT, and the idea would be to surrender your past two licenses and just use your more advanced license, which I think I agree to that. I don't use I've got sentimentality to my old licenses, but that's it really. So I'm quite happy with cleaning up the license and releasing those previous call signs for new people, rather than keep inventing more and more extensions to the M levels, although they are proposing M8 and M9. So they're streamlining that part of it, but also extending the M levels anyway. So M0, M6, M7, M8, M9, the more that we have of these variations, I think for overseas people, it's still going to be some confusion there, whether you're a foundation or whether you're a full. It's a bit. I think it's still going to be some residue confusion in some of the call signs. So they're also thinking about actually allowing people to change your call sign periodically. In the moment, I'm not sure about that yet. If you get a call sign that's not your favorite because it doesn't match your initials, you could probably wait till that call sign appears later on and then change your call sign. But I'm not sure how that will affect logbooks and continuation of logs. So there will be some technical adjustments that need to be made, I guess, if you're able to change your call sign. So I'm not sure about that one yet. Talking about adjusting the power levels as well for foundation and intermediate. So the foundation, they're thinking of going up to 20 watts and then 100 watts for intermediate. And I'm all for that, because the difference between 10 watts and 20 watts can actually be quite significant, especially when I became an intermediate license holder and I could get up to 50 watts, even though really nobody's watching you anyway. So, it is just a matter of personal preference really with how you manage the outputs of your radios. But I found that going to 20 watts when I became an intermediate, I noticed quite a bit of difference of breaking through certain certain contests and certain pile-ups. So increasing that output, I think, will reduce some of the frustration that you get as a foundation holder. So, and then moving the 100 watts to the intermediate, I think, is also a pretty good move, because the you're not going to lose anything in the way of health and safety or equipment safety by moving from 50 to 100 if you're on intermediate, because you've learned more about the radio, learned more about safety. You've probably learned more about operating the radio and antenna safely in public spaces. So really, these increases in output, with the recent changes to risk assessments, I think there isn't really anything there to complain about. There's also talk about allowing foundation holders and intermediate holders to have much more freedom around running repeaters and beacons and remote control of the radio. And I think this in itself is also a pretty good move, because the use of computer-based technologies and ham radio are so deeply embedded nowadays, and computers are much more capable of running remote systems. So in the Ofcom proposal document on page 5, there's a pretty handy visual guide to some of the changes that are either intended to modernise the hobby or to clarify and streamline the hobby to make it easier to understand. So I think the intention here, by the looks of it, is to look at the changing nature of radio communications and the communications hobby in general, and that people who are into this kind of stuff are integrating digital technologies much deeper into the radio as well. So they are looking at these ideas around beacons and repeaters, and even small low powered airborne radio transmissions. I think it's trying to attract the makers, the tinkerers, the people that are interested in the Internet of Things. We're seeing much more of a an adaptation towards the changing nature of the Internet of Things here. So I think in some ways that has the opportunity to attract, based on the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and maths, this program that's been around for a few years that engages younger people and sixth formers and university groups into doing much more amateur satellite technologies, Internet of Things, radio-based technologies, and trying to bring the Ofcom changes to allow educational facilities to embrace amateur radio licensing as part of their activities, I think is a vital step to take here. Because as we all know, that when we take a visual look at amateur radio, especially in the UK, we see a lot of old geezers like me. Well, I'm 54 this year, so I'm probably not an old geezer, but I will be soon. I feel that way sometimes. But on average, the average age, 70 for UK, white, male, 70-year-old average age. We need to change that demographic, and some of these proposals in here, it seems as if they're trying to embrace that, and I'm all for that. And that's one of the responses I'll put into the proposal, that if we can engage much more work with the academic institutes, so sixth formers, even secondary schools and universities, and actually embracing the amateur radio licensing system as part of their educational work, I think is a key bit here. I don't see much in here around addressing the gender imbalance in amateur radio, it still is dominated by the older white male, and that's just the nature of the hobby. It doesn't help. Oh, I don't want to be controversial here. It doesn't help that I was listening to one of the well-known amateur radio podcasts, interviewing the RSGB chairman, and pretty much within 5 minutes of the podcast, the interviewer is talking about woke, talking about some of the proposed changes in the Ofcom around the licensing and using the secondary prefix, the Wales, Scotland, the M, the W, and all that, having E as an option was seen as woke, and I just felt that that's not going to help with the hobby really if people are watching those sort of videos. So something I did find interesting was as part of just trying to look around before I did this little mini to camera response. I had a look on some of the Facebook groups, which I've not been in. I've not been in the Facebook groups for a long time because they just became a bun fight. It became just a lot of mudslinging, and at times became quite unruly. I'm not very interested from that point of view. But I decided to read through some of the forums, the Facebook groups, just to get an idea of people's response to these proposed changes, thinking there'd be some meaty discussions going on in there. And it's just there's hardly anything. I think there's 3 or 4 attempts at people putting a video or a link in there to the proposed changes, but hardly any activity on the forums around this. So, which in itself is a little bit worrying, because this is the future of the hobby that we all have a responsibility in. I think it's a hidden, it's a assumed responsibility that when you become a licensed amateur radio operator, you're involved in the hobby. You have a responsibility not only through your license but also to the future of that hobby, or else there'd be no one else to talk to if you didn't do that. So, like I said, I'll put the links in below. I think if you can just take some time out just to read through, even if you're just reading through some of the summary of the proposed changes, maybe speak to your local club if you're in a club, and just get involved in responding to this, because this is quite a significant turning point, I think, for the future of amateur radio. And we've got until September to fill in the form. It's not too the form's not too difficult. You either agree or you disagree, yes or no, to the proposed different elements of the changes, and then add some comments in. So I'll be doing that after this video. So thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking to the end. And the next video I'll be out and about doing some portable malarkey. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye for now.